Some of the doors to the church on the lower level were boarded up just for security and nailed shut.
A dying Chicago parish on the verge of shutting down
It was like a ghost town here.
miraculously comes back to life
So we went from being condemned to excellent.
and spawns a new religious order of priests
Imitate what you celebrate.
dedicated to replicating this miracle wherever they go.
In the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
The incredible story of the revitalization of St. John Cantius Church. Next on Assignment.
Good morning, Chicago, and a windy 53-degree morning it is here in greater Chicagoland. At 5:28 a.m., we're approaching the half-hour mark. Traffic out there.
Our goal in this parish is to make saints of everyone who come to this place. Real simple. It's just very, very simple. Sometimes in my homilies I tell the people the church is like just a treasure chest. There's so much for each one of us. And so sometimes, people just take one little piece of the treasure and just run away with us. Just grab as much as you want, keep coming back for more. And that's the spiritual life. Well, our parishioners are very educated, not educated, white, black, Hispanic, young, old, very involved in the church, just on the outside of the church. They're all coming here because each one of them is being nourished spiritually. The greatest teacher we have is Jesus Christ. And where does Jesus Christ teach us the best? At the Mass. So all these individuals are trying to truly live very holy lives in a very secular world.
All right, ready? Avanti, avanti.
Where do they get the nourishment? From the Holy Eucharist, from the Mass. The people who built St. John Cantius Parish, as I understand, were from an area in Poland called Galicia. St. John Cantius was known as Polish Patch. It was a very tight neighborhood.
Father Frank Phillips has been pastor at St. John Cantius Church in Chicago since 1988. From the time it was built in 1893, the parish grew and flourished. By the early 1920s, there were over 23,000 parishioners.
And, even like when the grammar school was built, I understand at one time there were like 3,000 children in the grammar school. That was early 1900s, 1920s.
The parish continued to thrive well into the mid-1920s.
And then this parish had its first urban renewal with the construction of Ogden Avenue. The school went from 3,000 down to 400. So that's how many parishioners were taken out just with Ogden Avenue going through. But the parish itself in the 40s, 50s began just declining with decreased enrollment. And then in the late 60s, when the Kennedy went through, 94, they lost another 800 families. I think this was one of the first Catholic schools in the Archdiocese to close, I think around 1968. So when the school closed, more people moved out. The church itself always was maintained very nicely. So it was always clean. But then we started going into like the boiler room, different storerooms. Every room was just filled with debris. Every window in the basement of the church was boarded up. Some of the doors to the church on the lower level were boarded up just for security and nailed shut. I remember talking to one of our brothers who was stationed here at one time. He and one of the other priests used to look out the window in the evenings, and it was like a ghost town here. And they always wondered, what will happen to Kantowo, which is the Polish for Cantius? What will happen to our Cantius? So many people said that the expressways would kill all these parishes. And yet I always thought, well, if they take people away, it could also bring people here just as easily. And that was one of the premises I worked on when I asked to come here. One of the things when I first came here was I told Provincial and the Council that I will do the present Mass of Paul VI, which follows the 1972 books, in Latin. Now what that means, okay, we'll do the Latin chant, we'll do Latin polyphonic music, we'll do the prayers, the canon, and so on in Latin, with the readings and the prayer of the faithful and so on in the vernacular.
We don't know where they put him.
And that's actually when people started coming, to the parish. Just, again, word of mouth. And usually when the choir sang in the service, we used to have more people in the choir and on the altar serving than we had in the congregation still. But now the balance is totally upset, and there's more people in the benches now.
With the church building slowly but steadily being restored and the parish growing every month, Father Phillips then began looking into restoring the sacred heritage of the Catholic Church, such as the liturgy, the music, the artwork, and so on.
So, as long as we can follow what is in the books, I believe we're doing a great service to the church.
Time and time again, the young people are here because they've seen the traditional Mass or the way the new Mass is celebrated. They've not have been exposed to it before, wherever they might have come from. They're attracted to it.
And some people, with all their kids, 5, 6 kids in a van, may travel for 2 hours, come here for Mass.
People that were only going to the old Mass come to the new Mass. People only going to the new Mass coming to the old Mass. So that mixture of being open to the full treasures of the church.
And the church is, a little over 2,000 years old. So, the church is built on things that are old and ancient and new as well. And it's, good to have that combination effect. And that's what I see St. John Cantius doing. You have the new and the old, and you're bringing out the best of both.
Deliver us, Lord, from every evil, and grant us peace in our day.
Restoration means being able to provide sacramental services for the faithful, being faithful to the books which we use. Rubrics are very important because the more one is able to follow the rubrics, first of all, it shows a humility. And then the more one is humble at the altar, actually the more Jesus Christ shows through at the altar. Because it's not me, it's Jesus Christ.
Either I called Cardinal Giorgi, he called me, he was already here in Chicago. There are 10 men in this parish that are seeking the priesthood, or at least they have one way or another think they have a vocation to the priesthood. 10 men. He could not hardly believe what he was hearing. So he wanted to meet these 10 men. So he came into the dining room. It was filled. There were about 30 men in there who in one way or another in the parish had thought about the priesthood.
So with the permission of our provincial and council, with the permission of Cardinal George, I was able to undertake forming a new community of men dedicated to the restoration of the sacred, but more specifically liturgical apostolate.
To go out, throughout hopefully the country and hopefully the world one day, to let people know that you can have still the Tridentine Mass, but you can also have a beautiful Novus Ordo Mass. And to show people that Mass is, essential to our life, the holy sacrifice of the Mass. And it has to be done reverently, respectfully, and beautifully.
This is an ideal order because it's a place to restore a whole entire tradition of beauty in music and art that the Catholic Church has had.
It's showing people that the beautiful things of the Church in the past, and so many people are hungry for that, young people as well as the older people that remember when they used to have that.
It takes a lot of work to do what we're doing. But the thing is, this can be done anywhere. It would just take the time to look for, well, who can do this, who can do that, and so on. So it's not isolated, that's what I'm saying. And any parish can do what we're doing here. So all these individuals are trying to truly live very holy lives in a very secular world. Where do they get the nourishment? From the Holy Eucharist, from the Mass.
A large old Catholic church, once slated for the wrecking ball, with less than 200 parishioners, now referred to as a treasure of Chicago, with over 3,000 parishioners and growing, and a new religious order doing the same. This is a story with no end in sight, a true story that shows what can happen when just a few of God's people decide to begin restoring the sacred.